Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie, and welcome to today's webinar, Boost Your Email Results with Segmentation and Personalization. Thank you so much for joining us today. We know that everyone wants to know how to get better results from their emails. It's a very popular question. One of the best ways to do that is to segment your list and send those personalized and relevant emails. When an email is relevant to their needs, they're more likely to open, pay attention, and take the action you want them to take. And we see this in the stats around the industry as well. Segmented emails deliver transaction rates that are 6 times higher than non-personalized emails. And through proper segmentation, marketers can drive 3 times the revenue per email of broadcast emails that are really general. And when an email is not personalized, 52% of subscribers say that they're going to find somewhere else to go. So really just proves why this is so important. We know these strategies can seem time-consuming and a little daunting for many of you, and that's why today's webinar is all about this topic. Whether you're just starting at the process or looking for some strategies and ideas to improve what you're already doing, you're in the right place. With all of that in mind, let's take a look at our agenda to see more specifically what we're going to cover today. We're going to start by talking about some ideas for effective segmentation, some strategies and some techniques there. Then we're going to talk about how to create personalized, impactful emails that are going to drive better engagement and results for you. And lastly, we're going to talk about the analytics, how to leverage those analytics in order to experiment more with your personalization and segmentation tactics. Now, before we get into the details, allow me to introduce myself as well as our wonderful guests for today. My name is Stephanie French, and I'm the senior producer for webinars here at Constant Contact. And I'm very happy to bring back David Fisher. He is the founder for Solutions for Growth. It's a digital marketing agency dedicated to small businesses. David has been a key certified solution provider of Constant Contact for over 12 years now. And he's your go-to expert for all things email marketing and small business growth. So David, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's wonderful to be back.
Great. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. Let's talk about effective strategies and techniques that'll help you to segment your list. And I'd like to start with the basics. So I'd love it if you could talk about what segmentation is and why is it really so important?
It is important because everybody wants to be talked to as if they were the most important person in the room. In other words, segmenting is the practice of splitting your email list into smaller targeted groups that have something in common, which allows you to send them content that speaks to their needs or their requirements. The benefit to that, as it shows on the slide, is that you're going to get better engagement. Engagement meaning people are actually reading your emails and are interested in it. That is apparent in the increased opens and clicks on an email. If you are looking to sell something online, you'll get a better conversion, which means increased revenue. Because the emails speak to these people more specifically, your unsubscribe rate will go down and you get a better customer retention. So the bottom line of segmenting is it gets you better results.
And no matter who you are or what your organization is, you really can be segmenting your list and doing more personalization to improve those results. So how do you figure out really which strategy is going to be best for your organization and get started with this whole process?
It's a question of starting simple and small. You may have a list, whether it's 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people. Start with a very simple segmentation, such as customers versus prospects, East Coast versus West Coast, people who have bought a certain product or service and people who have not. And just start with one simple segmentation and see what the result is. Chances are you're going to see better performance in your email. And then you can take it to the next level and add another layer of segmentation. So for example, customers in Minnesota and customers in Montana, and see if there's a difference there. The thing to keep in mind is what segmentation makes sense for your business, whether it's a service or you're selling a product. It's really a question of understanding which are the biggest segments in your customers and prospects, and what kind of messaging would be more relevant to each of them.
Definitely. And I like this point too here on the screen is understanding your customer or supporter life cycle. So I know Gabby, she's helping behind the scenes, but she does some photography on this side. And so she does some maternity photos and family photos. And, people have different stages of their life cycle. So when you're targeting your messages, you really want to make sure that you're understanding that people may move from those different segments too. And that can help you better off with your segmentation and personalization as well.
Exactly.
So, David, what are some of the best ways for our audience and ways they could think about segmenting their own list?
You can go narrow, you can go broad. So on the geographic part, you can see different ways of doing it. We have international clients, and some of them need to segment by country because of language purposes. So someone who speaks French should not be getting an email in Spanish, for example. Age could be part of it. The demographic, are they married or not married? What kind of job they're in? I particularly find behaviors and actions very helpful, especially because Constant Contact has some specific tools, which we'll get into in just a moment, but really allows you to segment people based on how they're interacting and behaving with your emails. There are even some very special automatic features within the Constant Contact system that lets you know which people on the email list are interacting in certain ways with each email. On the nonprofit side, it might be people who have made donations or not. You can segment by size of donation, people who are volunteers within your organization and people who are not. So again, give thought to how you were to separate or segment people in your email list based on the messaging that you think is more effective for them. I see a question here about internal emails to employees, and a similar thing. You might have senior employees or more junior employees. You might have employees on the East Coast or West Coast of different offices, employees who have had a certain type of training or not. Again, think about how you would group those people.
Great. So many different ways you can go about it. And because of that, it's probably going to look a little bit different. So let's walk through a few more specific examples for different types of businesses or organizations. And we'll start with nonprofits. David?
Sure. So I briefly touched upon it a moment ago, but it's really a question of the easiest one is donors and non-donors. So someone who has made a donation, you may want to acknowledge it in the messaging. You might want to say it's great. Maybe you have an email for people who have made a donation to increase the donation. So thank you for your donation of $100. Would you consider an additional $20? Or would you consider a monthly program? If people are not donors, then you move into would you consider making your first donation? And there are different ways of doing that. Segment based on how much they contributed. What if they're a volunteer? What if they're a board member, maybe a volunteer board member, thanking them for their work? Remember, not all emails are necessarily there to sell or to get a donation. So for volunteers and board members, it could simply be a thank you email, right? Again, think of how to group people in a way that where they have something in common.
Definitely. Thank you for that. What about those who are in a business-to-business space or B2B? What are some example ways they could segment?
Again, it's a question of products. So I might sell products that cater to women and products who cater to men. That's an easy way to segment based on the product. You don't even necessarily have to know the gender, but just what they have purchased in the past. Maybe you're B2B and you sell to a specific industry, or the size of the customer. Are they spending $1 million with you for a year or $10,000, right? So different messaging there. Maybe it's a question of customers who are not engaged, and engaged could be whether they've never opened an email or they haven't purchased from you. There are different ways of doing that. And let's say a customer purchased a piece of machinery, and there are services and additional products that you can offer for that machinery. So you can say, hey, dear customer, you bought machine XYZ. We have a service plan for maintenance, or we have this other attachment that will make the machine work better, things like that. And the segmentation can be done that way. How to physically segment? There are basically two main areas. One is three main areas, sorry. You can physically go through your email list and mark people based on how they should be segmented. You can use the automatic tools within the Constant Contact system, or you can use information from another system, such as your CRM, that gives you additional information that allows you to segment the list.
Thanks. And Jen, I see your question. How do you segment if this information is not part of a contact's info? We're going to go through that here in a couple of minutes, where you can find some existing information, or if you really do, in fact, need to collect that information. We'll go through all the different ways. What about for those folks who are in retail or selling items online via e-commerce?
That's almost a very easy way to segment based on what they purchase. So if they purchase a particular item, they are interested in that type of product. So you might want to upsell them and cross-sell them with a product relevant to what they already bought. If they never bought, there's another message that goes out for them for that. If you are in e-commerce and your e-commerce platforms such as Shopify, WooCommerce, or WooCommerce, for example, and BigCommerce, those integrate with Constant Contact. So you can have a feed that automatically communicates to those people based on their cart abandoned, for example, or their search abandoned. There are all different ways of basically slicing the pie, especially with e-commerce, because you have so much data.
Definitely. Data really is the key in all of that. So that actually is a nice lead into our poll question here. And I'm going to get a poll popped up on your screen here. And the question is, if you were to start segmenting your list, which type of data would you find most valuable for segmenting your email marketing lists? Is it demographic information like age, location, and income? Behavioral data like purchase history, website visits, clicks, preferences like their interests or the product categories, or maybe all of the above? David, hopefully you can see some of those results there on the screen. I see 32% at the moment are currently saying all of the above.
It's not, I don't see the numbers.
You don't see it? Okay.
Oh, yeah, they're populating now. Yep, perfect.
Oh, perfect. May have been a slight delay there. Sorry about that. Preferences, or 28% are saying they're looking to segment by preferences. 18% are saying segment by behavioral data. 17% are saying the demographics. So we'll give everyone another moment or so to respond to that poll. I see we have a couple hundred of you who've replied. So let's see if we can bump up that number just a little bit more. Anything here surprising you so far, David?
No, and the green, the preferences, is probably the most relevant one, because you know what a customer's preference is. The behavioral one is a little bit more tricky, because you really need to look at data, and for many small businesses, and as an agency, we work really with small businesses, and I understand the challenges that there is in getting the data. Sometimes it's hard to get a detailed purchase history or website visit about a person, unless you really are in a e-commerce setting.
Great. So let's go ahead and close the poll here.
Yep.
And so the final results, we ended up with 38% of you saying all of the above. Preferences, we landed at 27%, behavioral data, 19%, and then demographic data at 16%. So there's a lot of places that you're going to find this data. Let me go ahead and close out that poll there.
That was interesting.
Yeah. All right. So how do we find this data? Where is the best place to start in finding all of this data and information that allows you to segment?
So there are really two or three parts. One is, if you have e-commerce, there's a huge amount of data available through that, based on purchase and donation data for nonprofits. Within the Constant Contact ecosystem, where you have an abundance of information tied to email clicks and open rates, And there's a feature within Constant Contact that allows you to look at each individual person in the account and see what their engagement is. It'll show you when you sent an email, when they received it, when they opened it, when they clicked on it. So you can really start segmenting based on those things. The screenshot you see on the right is these are automatic segments that are created if you have a Shopify website, and allows you to create these segments automatically through the integration with Constant Contact. We have deep experience in Shopify. This is something we set up very frequently, and it's remarkable the outcome of having such segmented lists, because you're really talking specifically to those people based on what they need to hear. There is also data from your CRM system where you may be able to tag people based on certain criteria: customers, prospects, the level of customer, the level of prospect. You can tag them as someone who hasn't purchased in a long time, so it's time for them to buy something else again. So again, think about these people, picture them all in one room, and how would you separate them? Who goes in which corner? And each one of those needs to receive a message that really is relevant to them.
Great. Now, Al, or no, it's Catherine. I see you're asking about, does Constant Contact integrate with Zoho? Yes. So that's what we want to talk about next. Make sure that you're syncing with all of your other tools that you're using outside of Constant Contact or email marketing platform to automate that data going in there, so you're not uploading lists constantly, and it's really going to save you time. So make sure you're integrating your CRM, shopping cart, and any other place out there that you're storing data. Anything else that you want to add about this, David?
There are many tools out there, and that's just a brief screenshot of what Constant Contact has available. And if there is data in some silo of yours in your company, CRM, e-commerce platform, phone system, it really behooves you to integrate it with Constant Contact, because the more data you have, the more precise you can be with your marketing. The more precise you're going to be, the better results you're going to get.
Yeah, we're going to talk about here in a moment collecting more data, but a lot of times this data is already existing for us in some of these other systems. So definitely highly recommend looking at that data and make sure they're syncing together. Right. So let's talk about that, collecting additional data to help you segment and personalize your email communications. What are some of the different ways we can go about that?
Oh, they're all different ways. You have one here on the screen regarding that would appear on the website. So Constant Contact has the ability to create tools that allow you to collect a piece of information from people visiting your website. It could be a pop-up, like appears right here, and the person even can select which list they want to be in. You can have, so when they're signing up, and I always encourage people to give something of value in return for an email address. If you just say sign up for our newsletter, it's like, why should it? What's in there? What's in it for me, right? But if you say, get a 10% coupon or get a guide for something and so on, you're far more likely to get people to sign up.
Yeah, show them the value that's there right there on that sign-up form to entice them. And this is going to allow you to collect that kind of data right at the start when they're signing up to be on your mailing list. So this is just a really simple form here. We've got email lists listed that they can choose from for their interests, if you want to collect their first name. And if you want to ask maybe a custom filled question or something like that. Right. Just remember to keep this form short and sweet so that you're not asking for too much right off the bat, because if they've just visited your website for the first time, they may not fully trust you at this point to give out a lot more information. You can also ask existing subscribers to update their profile with you. What advice do you have for this one?
It's self-identification. So in this case, this is a fitness club. So you have a series of newsletters going out, and you can, as a user, you can select whether you want to be informed about nutrition or online reservations. There are different ways of doing it. There are actually pros and cons to doing this. You can use it if you have a large list and a lot of people, and it's a way to segment them. Sometimes it's better just to keep everybody in one list and then internally segment them based on your specific needs. Again, it's a strategy decision, a business decision that you need to take, but it's really tied to knowing that these features are available in the constant contact world.
Definitely. And I will say the additional benefit of asking subscribers to update their profile, there's an update profile link at the bottom of all of your emails. And I think someone asked a question earlier about unsubscribes. So if you set up your update profile form and you add different lists that they could choose from, you may not lose them completely because they could then segment themselves and choose a list based off of their interests. So definitely something to think about and consider there, but don't provide them with 10, 20 lists to choose from. I would only let them choose from a few select lists there, right, on either your sign up form or your update profile form.
And one little comment I would make, when you're showing the names of the lists, make sure that the lists or names are really, really clear about what they are. Don't use a name for a list called like list A and list B, or an acronym or something like that. Make it really clear to the user what it's about.
Great point. The other thing that you can do is easily set up when you're creating your campaigns. It's called click segmentation. And when you enable it, you create a link in your email and just turn the feature on and choose a list for these people to be added to when they click. It happens automatically when a subscriber clicks, which is really great. It saves you some time. Anything else you want to add for this option, David?
Yeah, that's really smart, especially if you sell different things through an email. So let's say you have product or service A, B, or C. Depending on what they click on, it automatically segments people based on whether they're clicking on A, B, or C. And you know what they're most interested in, so you can send a follow-up email based on that particular product. Maybe you want to include a discount. And consider even setting up what is called as an autoresponder or an email nurture series, which is a series of emails that are pre-written and pre-scheduled that are triggered when someone clicks on a specific link in an email. It just elevates all your email marketing fantastically.
And if you haven't used anything like this before, rest assured that there's still all that data under your reporting tab. So you can always go in and you can dig into the data and look at people who click on a specific link in order to add them to a list. And I will also mention, if you look on the right-hand side of your big marker, the screen here for the webinar, there is a tab called Handouts. We've got lots of great resources to go along with the conversation today. And for this one in particular, how to go in and set up the click segmentation feature.
Mm-hmm.
The other idea here is to use a survey or a poll to collect information. What suggestions do you have for this?
So anytime you run a survey or a poll, it's important that the questions you ask are really actionable. Sometimes as a business owner, you want to ask questions because you're curious to know, but what are you really going to do with that information? So think about making sure the survey is not long and asking questions that are really relevant to you to be able to communicate effectively with these people. If it was B2B, maybe you want to ask for their role in the company or what their buying limits are. If it's a nonprofit, you may want to ask what type of nonprofit areas they're interested in. Are they interested in volunteering or not? So think carefully about the questions, but again, it's a smart way to segment your list.
And what is your best advice here for getting more people to complete your survey?
Well, you can offer something of value. If it's a nonprofit, for example, you can say for every survey that's completed, we will give X money to someone. We will do this wonderful thing to help this cause. If it's a for-profit business, you can offer a discount, a gift card. Again, it's up to you. Anytime you offer something of value in return for people's time and information, you're going to get a higher take rate.
And I would say just add in a little spiel there about what the value is for them in collecting this information too. And the fact here is you're collecting it to make your information and the emails you're sending more relevant to them so that, they're not getting information about birds if they only have a dog or something like that. Let's say you're a pet store.
Mm-hmm. Perfect example. Yeah.
All right. So what are some of the other fields or data that you maybe suggest collecting? Maybe it's helpful now or in the future to personalize emails.
So personalizing an email, it's one of the things that we do a lot at Solutions for Growth, and that is where you're creating an email that is personalized for that person based on data that you have for that person. It could be as simple as hi blank, and the blank is the name of the first person, that person's first name. So it could be hi Stephanie. It could be something about what they bought. So it could be, hi, Stephanie, thank you for your purchase of the XYZ product. We thought you might enjoy these other items that are complimentary and will add more joy to when you use the product, something like that. So the personalization really elevates the segmentation. It can be done with or without segmentation, but it's another way to really stand out in the market. And with our clients, we've noticed that when we personalize the subject line, putting the person's first name in the subject line, the open rate goes up between 20 and 25%, simply because the person sees their name in the subject line. It's really remarkable.
Definitely. So a lot of different questions you can ask. Another example I'll throw out is, let's say for those of you who in real estate, which I know we've at least got a few of you, you might ask what type of property they're interested in, whether it be commercial or residential. You might want to find out whether they're looking to sell a property and maybe the price range they're looking for when they're buying a new property. Those types of things can help you segment and send those really relevant email campaigns.
Correct.
Now, once you have an idea of how you want to test into segmenting your list, there are a lot of different ways, like you said, David, in order to do that. You can start by creating and moving contacts into their respective lists, or you can look at these pre-built segments in your account. I forgot who asked the question a little bit earlier, but this is exactly where you're going to find these segments, like most engaged and least engaged, under your contacts tab in the segments tool. So you'll find them and you'll be able to send those relevant emails right to that group of people. The other thing that you can do with this segments tool is create more customized segments that are going to be more dynamic. So you can take all the different pieces of criteria and details that you know about your contacts, their contact activity, the list that they're in within your account, details within their profile, and any of that e-commerce information when you're syncing with a tool like Shopify, for example. The nice thing about all of that is that when you're using the segments tool, once someone new meets that criteria, the segment is always going to be up to date. So all you need to do is go in there and start creating your next email in order to send to them. Now, if you want to learn how to start managing and moving your contacts and segmenting right within Constant Contact, we have another webinar that's going to demo step-by-step how to use those various tools that we've mentioned. And the next session is happening on Tuesday. So that's next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You're going to find a link to register for that in the handouts tab on the right-hand side. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to talk about creating those personalized emails to send to your segments and more ways that you can drive better results. Now, to get the full benefit of segmentation, you really want to just make sure you're crafting the emails in a way that's going to capture their attention, make them feel like the email is just for them and not that they're on a list of hundreds or maybe even thousands of people. We know that 80% of marketers personalize emails with profile data, and 64% create relevant emails by segmenting their lists. So, David, what advice do you have when it comes to really crafting these personalized emails?
One thing to be aware of is making sure that you are not over personalizing, because that falls a little bit on the creepy side. So if I started putting, a dozen different fields about what I know about you, as a recipient, the recipient might feel a little, that's a little too much information. So use your judgment in terms of how much you're using it. Certainly a first name, maybe you can mention a product or service that they bought, or something that you know is relevant to them. The subject line can be personalized. The beauty of this dynamic content is that you can not only include text where the personalization can appear, but I'll show you in the next slide also specific blocks and images to do that. Again, use your judgment in terms of what relevant fields make sense for that person, so it does speak to them, but is not overly personalized, because it will almost come across as fake.
Definitely. And I know we had some questions, at least on the registration form, of people wanting to, or kind of worried, I guess, about like a greeting tab, for example, where someone has signed up on a form and put the first name as something a little weird, or maybe it doesn't have the right capitalization or something like that.
Yeah.
Any ways to combat and look for things like that?
Yes. So one is, depending on the volume of emails or information that comes in, you might want to look at it on a regular basis and see that the capitalization is correct, for example, or something like that. And in some cases, people will not complete every field. So when you are creating these dynamic fields in the email, it's important that you have a backup content that replaces that missing information. So for example, if your email starts with dear first name, and you know the first name, great, dear John. If you don't have the first name for a particular contact, the backup just replaces the dear first name with the word greetings, which is generic enough, and you avoid having a dear blank situation in the email. One thing we do at Solutions for Growth before we send out any email for our clients is that we test the email just for these type of situations. So we'll create the email, we'll send it to an internal group, and we check all these type of things, because the last thing you want to do is have a dear blank or a dear customer, which is a little better than dear blank, but not wonderful.
Great. I know Melissa was just asking that question, but she also had a part 2 of that question. What if they input, or you only have, let's say, their first initial of their first name?
Good question. You might want to go through the list and eyeball it, and if you see just an initial, delete it.
That is exactly what I was going to suggest. So that way it picks up whatever your default is, whether it's like greeting or hello or something to that effect.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So let's take a look at a few different examples here, because you can accomplish this in many different ways. In this example that we see here on the screen, you've got 2 emails, completely different content, and each email is sent to a proper list or the segment. On the left is the content for people who've shown interest in soccer. Now there's some info on cleats and shin guards for that sport. Down below, we see the digital coupon for the code soccer to use at checkout. On the right-hand side, we see all of the things for runners. It includes some information on the clearance sale for running shoes, fitness trackers, and then a coupon targeted just for those runners. These are completely separate emails. That's fine to do it that way, and they can go out to those individual lists or segments, really depending on your preference and how you set it up within your account. Here's another example. So we've got one email. This is the great thing about dynamic content. You can basically create one email, and then just a part of that email can change dynamically based on who you want to be able to see that content. So the version on the left is just the standard email, last chance, sale ends tomorrow. The right email also includes that, yet we see a Writing Safely event for a promotion of that right down below, and that is using the dynamic content block. So what we did here is anybody who was noted as having kids within their customer profile, we're able to show that specifically to them so that we can target those people and get those people with their kids to attend the event. Here's just another example of how you can use dynamic content. Who out there is using email newsletters? You can use the Q&A section to say yes or no. Are you sending a newsletter that has multiple blocks and pieces of content?
Yes, absolutely. And you can see that they're on the right. A little bit further down on the right, you can see that there's extra content based on criteria that you set up when you created the email.
Great. Yeah, I see Julianne, yes. Matt is. Jen, Sarah, Tiffany, Kelly is not. Cheryl is. Margaret, Benita. Okay, so we see lots of yeses in there. That's great. So yeah, the one on the left is a special message just from the founder that includes a video that shows dynamically to those people. So again, the real benefit here with dynamic content, it's a simple way to save you time. Create one email, but personalize just some of that information. So earlier, we've talked about some of those common segments that really, I think anyone in our audience could use within their business or their organization. So what's the best way to craft some of these types of emails?
So this ties into actually to the poll that you were asking earlier, because it's tied to behavior, and this is the best way to really segment folks. So there are 4 examples here. One is someone made a purchase recently, so you might want to ask them to write a review. We hope you're pleased with it. Please click here to write a review either on our website or on Google or Yelp or something like that. Or you might want to offer them the opportunity to cross-sell or upsell. We see in our business that when clients have a program to cross-sell and upsell with their customers, almost always they end up creating additional revenue that wouldn't have happened without an email addressed to these people who made a recent purchase of their product or service. The unengaged, the reality is that most people don't open an email. With an open rate of maybe, let's say, whatever the open rate is, 15, 20, 30, 40%, most of them don't open it. So the feature that allows you to send an email to folks who are unengaged is great. And the subject line is going to be key there, because you want people to open the email and take action. It could be a coupon, a discount. It could be a funny line. Hey, we really miss you, or something like that. The most engaged, those are the ones who are the biggest donors or are buying more product from you. Do something special for them. So let's say you're a restaurant and you know that these people have come to your restaurant each month on a regular basis. Well, why don't you send them an email and say, thank you so much for being such a wonderful guest. Here's a coupon for a free dessert or a free glass of wine on us. Think of how they feel, and they will certainly come back. Prospects, nurturing prospects. Most people who come to your website or you talk to are not going to buy from you right away. That's why having emails that nurture these people, where you're sharing information that they will find helpful, information about your company, that's how you nurture these people, so they go from being a cold lead to a warm lead to a customer.
And that example right there is really one of the main reasons you want to have a sign-up form listed on your website, so you can start to build that trust with them, start to nurture them, let them get to know you, and then they can make that purchase with you. And like I said before, really any of these segments, they're pretty common and can be used across all different industries and types of businesses or organizations. I will mention we have recent purchases there on the screen, but those of you in the nonprofit world can use that too. If someone has recently made a donation, ask for their review of your nonprofit so you can get out there a little bit more. And also, it says cross-sell, but think about cross-selling them too. Maybe other ways that they could get involved with your organization, like, spending some time volunteering with you.
Yep, exactly.
All right, let's go ahead and move on and talk about using your email analytics to refine your segmentation and personalization tactics. So what are really some of the key metrics to pay attention to here in order to understand how all of this is performing?
So the key metrics are some of the things we touched on earlier: opens and clicks. And I'll comment on the opens and the clicks for a moment, because I noticed that there's some questions coming through this about that. So over time, there are 2 issues surrounding this. One is on the open rate, and there are companies out there, in this case Apple, tends to create opens that are artificial. Nothing that can be done about it, and what we advise our clients is to assume that your open rate is probably 10% 10% lower than what you're actually seeing, simply because there's some fake open rates. That's just the reality of the business. You'll have this situation with any email service provider. That's just the way it is. But using 10%, it just allows you to see what a realistic open rate is. Other ways to find out, how your segmentation and personalization is performing is results. Are you selling more? Are you getting more appointments with leads? Are you seeing more inventory being moved? Are you getting more donations? So certainly the open and the click rate are an initial indication of the performance of the program, but the bottom line is dollars, right? So is that moving the needle? And I'll comment here on one thing, and that is that email marketing is really a fantastic tool. It's one of the lowest cost tools that allow you to get an ROI, which is really very positive. I would say, though, that it's important that you do email marketing the right way. And I'm just going to tease something now that you may want to hold on to, which is at the end of this presentation, I'll be providing a free guide called Mastering Email Campaigns, Strategies for Captivating Design and Content to Boost Sales. Hang on a few more minutes and you can get that. But again, going back to the integration with various tools, the Shopify, WooCommerce, Big Zoho, and so on, all those should you be seeing better results with email done well, particularly with Constant Contact.
Great. And I want to tackle Linda's question here in just a minute. What do you mean fake open rate? I know you mentioned the Apple mail privacy, or you alluded to it. Could you talk about that just a little bit more?
Yes. So Apple has let me take a step back. So every email that Constant Contact sends includes a 1 pixel image. You can't see it with the naked eye, but when that is open and triggered, it counts as an email. Apple opens, technically, not physically, but triggers that pixel, and that creates a fake open. They're doing that for their own security purposes, and that's where that 10% I was mentioning earlier comes into play, to know that not all your opens are true opens. Assume that the true open is about 10% lower.
And really, I suggest, clicks are usually a better measure of success, but also conversions and things like that. Looking beyond just those opens can give you a better idea of how your emails are performing. So you mentioned smaller groups to test into your segments. How big should your segments be in order to gauge the success of your efforts? And how long or how many sends should you have before you mark it as successful or not?
Smart question. So it's tied to the size of your list. So let's say a list of 1,000 people. Test it with 10, maybe 20% of the list, so 100 or 200 people, and see what happens. If it's going really well, go ahead and expand it to the whole list. If you see some doubts or the result is uncertain, run it a second time and see what happens. In other words, don't test segmenting and personalizing with the whole list, because in marketing there are no guarantees. So you just want to test things with a 10 to 20% of your list, validate that it's correct with a second test. Assuming everything works out fine, you roll it out to the whole list.
Yeah, every business, organization, and audience is different. So, of course, we've got all these different suggestions for you. And, if something isn't working, then you might try doing something a little bit differently in order to get better results.
One other thing I'll add is, when you're doing these type of tests, you want to be able to track them as well. So if you're selling something, you might want to be using a specific promo code. You want to be looking at Google Analytics and what kind of website traffic is coming right after you send those emails. So make sure you have data supporting whether this is working or not just a gut feeling, because gut feelings are not as precise as data.
Definitely. There's data in so many places out there. So we're in a good place, and I know we have tons of questions coming in, and I want to make sure we have time to get to those. David, any final thoughts before we start to wrap up today?
Yes. So start small, start simple, get your feet wet, get a couple of great results, and then expand. Make sure you think carefully about your initial segmentation. What is the most obvious one? Nonprofits is donors and not donors. B2B is customers or not customers. Consumers is people who have purchased from you or not. Keep it really simple, and not only will you be able to learn how to use the Constant Contact system better, but you'll start seeing good results, you'll feel better about it, and your business will grow. We do manage email programs for small businesses around the country. We've been doing this for 14 years. We know a couple of things about this. We're happy to help out, but also the folks at Constant Contact have great support teams that can do that for you. So the different ways of making sure that you're maximizing your use of the Constant Contact system.
Great. So I want to let you all know that at Constant Contact, we offer an easy to use digital marketing platform with email at its core. We have automation tools, which tags on nicely to some of the things we talked about today, especially like those prospect and nurture flows and things like that, social media tools, digital ads, surveys, events, and so much more. And we also, like we've alluded to before, we have integrations with so many of the tools that you may already be using, like Donor Perfect, Canva, Shopify, Eventbrite, Google Ads, and so many more. If you don't already have an account, you can sign up for a free trial. Just click the link. We're going to pop it up right there on your screen. And you can take a look at that. There we go. The other thing that I want to mention is if you'd like to get feedback on your segmentation and personalization strategy or any of your campaigns, you can get help in our community. You can basically go in and ask a question. So I'm going to pop up another link right there in the middle of your screen. There we go. And so what you can do is if you click on that link, you can then say, ask a question. You may, if you're not already logged into your Constant Contact account, it'll prompt you if you're not. Make sure you create a title for your post and explain a little bit about your business within the description, kind of your goals and your strategy, and describe what kind of feedback that you're looking for. I believe David's going to hop in there at some point later, and then I'll be hopping in, and we have a whole team behind the scenes who can certainly help to answer those types of things and just make sure that you're feeling good and confident about your strategy there. And David, I know you mentioned you had a guide, so I'll let you touch on that.
Sure. This is a guide for mastering email campaigns. It's how to turn ho-hum emails into emails that actually perform for you. It talks about best practices, things that we've learned over the many years of doing them, what features to use in Constant Contact. It's free of charge. You can go to that bit.ly, or there's a pop-up that will allow you to click on it directly. There's a link of it in the Q&A chat as well.
Great. So we're popping that up right there on the screen for you. And then we'll go ahead and get into more of these great questions coming in. Thank you so much. So Sarah is asking, what would you suggest specifically for nonprofits as a reward? And I believe this is coming from the segment where we were talking about the sign-up form and offering something in return.
Sure. So with a nonprofit, a lot of it has to do with recognition. So, make a donation and you'll appear on the list of people who have donated, or you'll receive a token of appreciation, you'll get a certificate, or you can give something of value, maybe a gift card, or let's say a local business is offering a gift card to anybody who makes a donation, things like that. So again, depends on the scope, the funds, and what motivates your typical donor to donate. Maybe it's a meeting with a key person or one of the beneficiaries. There are different ways of doing it.
Great. And I know you have lots of different ideas. I feel like we could talk about ideas all day. Sandy wants to know, what's the difference between the tabs in Constant Contact lists and segments?
So a list is, let's call it a permanent list of email addresses. It's not permanent, but it's a bucket that has the email addresses in a list. And I'm sorry, and tags or segments? What was the question?
Lists and segments specifically.
Segments. The segment is a way to subdivide one or more lists. So you could have a list of everybody and you segment out the people who are customers of yours already. And that becomes a segment. And when you send an email, you can select the full list or just the segment, depending what your goal is.
The biggest benefit that I like about the segments and using that is that when someone new meets whatever criteria, you've uploaded a list, or maybe they've started being more engaged in your email campaigns and clicking, is they're automatically going to be moved into that particular segment. So you're not necessarily constantly on the move of moving people into different lists based on different criteria there.
Yep, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Are there any best practices around the frequency of emailing your segments?
So I could talk for an hour.
What a question.
But succinctly, the answer is use your judgment and put yourself in the shoes of the people you're emailing. You don't want to email too frequently, otherwise you start annoying people and your unsubscribe rate will go up. So if you are looking to change the cadence at which you're sending, moving from monthly to every other week, for example, do that for 2 or 3 times and look at your unsubscribe rate. Look at your engagement rate. Is it going up? Is it going down? That's the data that will help you decide. Generally speaking, for most businesses, especially in B2B, a monthly cadence makes sense. It's a good balance between staying in front of people frequently enough so the emails are meaningful, but without knocking on their door too frequently that you're annoying them. If you are a retail business, kind of on the consumer level, a yoga studio or something like that, a weekly email may make more sense simply because you have, for example, a schedule to send out to these people.
Yeah, and the other thing you can do with segmentation is if you're worried about that, or let's say you have a wide difference in generations and ages, an older generation, and you're noticing more younger people in there, you might have them update their profile and let them choose, do I want a monthly email or would I prefer a shorter weekly email or something like that? And you can use those as your segments as well and just simply ask them so you can split them into groups and make that their preference.
Good point. Yep.
Alistair wants to know, what if you are a small business and your list is quite small? A test may not reach enough people to get good data. That's a great question.
I think you're right. If you have 100 email addresses, that tends to be a smaller list. And, testing it with 20 people, your sample size is really a little too small. So your goal at this point is really to grow the list. And if the list is small, you may even be able, it's not perfect, but you may want to test it anyway. Try it out with 20 people. Again, it depends what you're offering, what type of business you're in. There's many variables. But yes, a bigger list will allow you to create more testing opportunities. Yeah.
Great. And I'm just going to share in the chat panel there out to all of you. It is the link to our events page, but on that page lists all of our upcoming webinars. If you scroll down about halfway on that page, there is a webinar on how to grow your list in Constant Contact. It's got all of the tools. We kind of featured some of them in today's webinar, but if you want to know all the ins and outs of those in order to grow your list, to build more segments in the future, that's definitely a great opportunity for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Catherine wants to know, do you usually send a short survey to unsubscribes, link to best practices to win them back?
If someone unsubscribed, you will not be able to send them an email.
Yeah, you want to make sure you're not emailing those people per the Can-Spam Act, and depending on where you're at, there are different Can-Spam Acts with slightly different rules, but basically you want to make sure you're only sending to people who have given you permission. And if they've unsubscribed, they're taking that permission away.
One comment I'll add is that, many of our clients feel that if someone unsubscribes from their list, they take it personally. But the way to look at it is that these are people who are most likely not going to buy from you. They may think you're a nice person, but they're not interested in what you're offering. So it's the market telling you that they're not seeing value in the emails that you're sending them. It's normal to have some unsubscribes. If you're between 0.5% and 1%, you're in the averages. But anything over 1%, it's the market telling you, I really don't like your emails.
Yeah, so if you're doing those segments, like you said, to test into it, and you see that unsubscribe rate go up, definitely dive into those. You can collect the reasons people are unsubscribing, and they might say too much email or not relevant to me or something to that effect.
Yeah.
So this next person says, working for a university that puts on a weekly newsletter for news and events, and we have separate lists now for faculty, staff, alumni, and students, and send separate emails. If someone wants to unsubscribe from a specific campaign, but not all university communication, is it better to have a big list with segments or keep lists and emails separate?
Well, you can offer the opportunity to update their profile and select which list they want to be in. They can always still unsubscribe, but it's a way of saving the person.
Yeah, they might see that option in there for the list that they're like, oh, I'd rather receive this type of information and not anything so general.
Right.
All right. Let's see. I can't remember if we covered this one. If you can remind me or actually, no, I do believe we covered the nonprofit reward one. Brett asks, how do you decide segmenting a group in a list and what to use for tag categories?
It depends on every organization. We spoke about segmenting and tagging based on what makes sense in your business. If you had indicated a type of business, we could help you. But let's say you own a department store. Okay, silly example, but you want to find out who shops in menswear, who shops in women's wear, who shops in housewares, who wants the more upscale brands based on their prior history. Think about your business and how do you think you should divide these people. A department store is going to be very different than a B2B company that sells very technical industrial equipment. There they might tag or segment based on industry or type of product that they purchased, their most recent purchase, their sales volume, all different ways. And based on how you segment these people or tag them, how are you going to communicate differently with them? What is the message going to be that is different from one to the other?
Great. Catherine asks, our customer is older, typically women 55 plus, and then they come into the store and complain like they're not receiving emails anymore. I feel like they have accidentally unsubscribed. We do know that it takes some effort to get them resubscribed, which can be challenging for our demographic. Any advice?
Yes, you can. There's a feature in Constant Contact that allows you to get people to sign up directly in the store, for example. So if you had an iPad and there's a link for each of your accounts, and you could just say, oh, I'm very sorry you're not getting them. Don't get into whether you're unsubscribed or not subscribed, and have them just type. There's a field that appears, and you have them type in their email address, and you're done.
Great. Jen says, I have 82,000 contacts all segmented by state. My emails are sent by time zone. Because I have 50 segments, how would I approach segmenting people further into additional segments? Like which type of emails they want to receive? It's like eating an elephant.
Well, anytime you have a really big project, you start with one little step at a time. So if you're eating an elephant, start with an ear. Silly joke. Anyway, but that's a smart question. So if you're segmenting through the 50 states and you want to sub-segment, you might want to actually create tags. So you might want to tag people, regardless of what state they live in, based on something that makes sense in your business. People who buy blue products instead of red products, okay? And this way you can say, send this email to people in Wyoming who like blue products. So the segmenting is the state, and the tagging is the type of product that they buy.
Great. Let's see. Frank asks, is it a good practice to send out a survey to collect data about your nonprofit organization?
Oh, yeah, sure, certainly. Wouldn't you want to know more information from donors and prospective donors and volunteers about your organization? What do they think of it? What's going well? What's not going well? What suggestions do they have? Yeah, absolutely. We've done plenty of those for clients, and see surveys as a terrific gift to help you run your organization better.
I was just going to say survey or feedback in itself is a gift. So
Yep.
you can always take that and make improvements that bring in more people and make your existing donors and supporters very happy.
Yeah.
Patty asks, what are the benefit of tags?
Tags is another way of segmenting or dividing your list in a way that it makes sense. So you might have one or multiple lists, but you might want to also tag people based on something specific. So it could be, for example, let's say you have sales reps. You have 3 sales reps, and you want to tag that particular contact based on who the sales rep is. So if it's Jennifer, the tag will be Jennifer. And if they are a customer, so they'll be in a segment called customers, and they're tagged as a Jennifer customer. And you can have emails going to those people, the customers who belong to Jennifer. by using the specific list and a specific tag.
Great example. And the thing to note with tags is they're going to be only visible to you, that they're that extra layer that you can use to manage and organize your contacts. So a contact, updating their profile or something like that won't be able to tag themselves. So if you think about it like that, it can help you figure out the best way that you want to use tags for your own audience.
Right.
All right. I think we have time for one more question here. Angela asks, over a period of years, we have created or automatically generated dozens of lists. How can we consolidate them, and should we?
Again, it's a business decision. If there's a reason why you have a lot of lists, keep it that way. If you have dozens of lists, it sounds like a lot. So what you can do is you can merge them. You can copy email addresses from one list to the other. Don't worry about duplicates because the system will automatically prevent duplicates. And so let's say you have, just for our conversation, you have 50 lists for the 50 states and you want to combine California with Oregon. You combine the two lists and you have one list, and you can add Washington State and you have the whole West Coast. So do it one step at a time. And consolidating, usually when you have so many lists, it's a little bit hard to manage the account. So consolidating them into fewer, more meaningful lists will help you better understand results that you're getting, target people better, and just make your job easier when you're working in your constant contact account.
Yeah, so you're not sifting through dozens of lists, sending a campaign, or trying to manage something in a list. I couldn't agree more. So we're right at the top of the hour. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Just a note, when we close out, a survey is going to pop up on your screen. We'd really love it if you take a minute or two to tell us what you thought about the webinar today and answer a few simple questions. It won't take any more than a minute or two. And I do know that we had quite a few people joining us today, so I know we probably didn't get to all the questions. We're going to come through the Q&A, and if we didn't get an answer to your questions, we're going to be posting more of that on the community as well. The link to the community is going to be in the follow-up email, as well as the email that's going to include the recording and all of the other resources. So, David, thanks again for joining us. You provided a wealth of information, and we're so glad you're able to join us.
Thank you, and to everybody else who was on here today.
Definitely. And to all of you in the audience, thank you for submitting your questions and engaging with us today. We really appreciate it, and best of luck in your segmentation and personalization journey. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye now.
Bye.